In the sun-scorched lands of the Levant, a chilling discovery was made. Archaeologists, digging through layers of forgotten history, unearthed something that defied explanation. Not just pottery, not just tools, but massive, petrified structures that looked like ancient beehives, but on a scale never before seen. And sealed within the hardened resin of these hives were human bones. This wasn't a tomb or a burial site in any conventional sense. The bones were integrated, fused with the very structure of the hive as if they were part of it. What kind of civilization would do this? The answer wasn't in any official historical records, but in the whispers and fragmented texts of local lore. They spoke of a time when the land was barren, when famine was a constant looming threat. Desperate, the people turned to an entity that promised salvation, an entity they called the Hive King, according to these legends. The Hive King wasn't a man, not really. It was described as a colossal being made of countless buzzing insects, a swarm given a single mind and a single, terrifying form. It moved like a shimmering cloud, a living storm of wings and stingers, yet it wore a human face. Not a mask, but a real human face, taken from its first follower, a face that would sometimes twitch with an echo of its former life. The Hive King's offer was simple, a covenant of prosperity. It promised endless harvests, fields that would overflow with grain, and orchards heavy with fruit regardless of drought or blight. The land would flourish under its reign, and the people would never know hunger again. The buzzing of its swarm would become the sound of life, the hum of abundance. But this gift came at a terrible price. The cost was one life. Each season, as the first shoots pushed through the soil or the first fruits began to ripen, one villager had to be chosen. They wouldn't be killed in a traditional sacrifice. Instead, they would be offered to the hive, willingly walking into the pulsating heart of the swarm. The legends say they were not consumed, but absorbed. Their bodies would become part of the hive's structure, their life force feeding the entity that sustained the village. Their bones would be enshrined in resin, a permanent part of the ever-growing kingdom of the Hive King. For generations, this pact was honored. The harvests were indeed miraculous. The surrounding lands withered, but this one valley thrived, an unnatural oasis of green. The people grew accustomed to the faint, constant hum that vibrated through the earth, the song of their insect monarch. They grew accustomed to the seasonal ritual, the solemn procession of the chosen one. It was a dark, but necessary, price for survival. Imagine the fear and the resignation. Choosing a loved one, a neighbor, knowing their fate was to become mortar in a living wall. But over time, things began to change. The Hive King grew. Its physical hives, once confined to a single cave, began to spread across the valley, great, waxy citadels climbing the cliffsides, and its hunger grew with it. The demand for one villager a season became 2, then 4. The human face it wore would decay, only to be replaced by a fresh one from a new offering, a constant, gruesome renewal. The promises of prosperity were still kept, but the cost was becoming unbearable. The village was being slowly, systematically absorbed. The people started to notice other, more unsettling changes. The children born in the valley no longer cried. They would stare at the hives with a strange, blank understanding. Sometimes a faint buzzing could be heard from their chests. The villagers realized they weren't just feeding a god. They were being transformed by it. They were becoming part of the hive mind, losing their individuality, their humanity. The breaking point finally came. A coalition of elders decided that survival at this cost was worse than extinction. They couldn't fight the Hive King directly. How do you fight a living storm? So they devised a plan. It was a desperate, suicidal gambit. They gathered what little remained of their people and, under the cover of a great storm, they triggered a massive landslide. They didn't try to destroy the hives. They knew they couldn't. Instead, they buried them. They brought the mountainside down upon the entire valley, entombing the Hive King and its grotesque kingdom under millions of tons of rock and earth. The survivors, a mere handful, fled the region, carrying the terrifying story with them, a story that would fade into myth and legend over the centuries. They left their former home to be forgotten, a cursed and silent place. And so we return to the archaeologists. Standing before these unearthed hives, they were baffled. But one of them, placing a sensitive audio device against the petrified resin, picked up something impossible. A sound incredibly faint but unmistakable. It was a low, rhythmic vibration. A hum. After thousands of years, buried deep beneath the earth, the heart of the hive was still beating. This discovery was quickly classified. The official reports will speak of a unique burial practice, a lost culture with strange rituals. But those who were there, those who heard the sound, they know the truth. They know what lies sleeping beneath the Levant. And they ask themselves a terrifying question: what happens when it wakes up? For an entity that lives for eons, a few thousand years is but a short nap. The hum is a promise, a threat, a patient waiting. The Hive King remembers its kingdom, and it will want it back. Thanks for watching. If you're fascinated by the dark corners of history and folklore, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We have many more strange tales to unearth. Stay curious and maybe listen a little more closely to the sounds beneath your feet. You never know what you might hear.